If everyone could take their seats, please.
No.
I'd like to call to order tonight's regular meeting of the CUSD 201 Board of Education, November 14, 2017. And roll call, please.
Ms. Ambrose. Mr. Armstrong.
Here.
Mrs. Charlton.
Here.
Mr. Johnson.
Here.
Mr. Price.
Here.
Mr. Strohmeyer. Ms. Wilson.
Here.
Thank you.
If we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the first item on the agenda is approval of minutes. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the October 24th, 2017 regular meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carried. Are there any public comments? And then we will move to celebrate success, the WTA.
How do we get it on the?
He'll take care of it in the
Okay.
booth.
Okay. Hello, my name is Jill Deck, and then this is Joan Stump and Lillian Sy. We're all from South School. One of the things that we do every year, we have a parents' night for our parents, and we have different topics every time. This last time, we actually did a parents' night on sensory, so sensory solutions for our students. These are just some of the things that we do in early childhood, so all of our kids are exposed to lots of noise, lots of activity all throughout the day. So for our sensory night, we actually sent this home as a flyer for the parents, just for them to kind of take a look at their student and see if they struggle with any of these things. One of the ways that students can struggle with sensory is a touchy student. So sometimes if they have a tag that's bothering them, sometimes it really irritates them and they can't focus. And these are just some of the ways that we discuss with the parents on how to help their child with this. One of the things that we do at school a lot, we do bubbles on the playground. So they actually have to pop the bubbles. And that that we talked about was having sensitive ears, and I put a picture of the fire drill. All three of us know it's a huge struggle for the fire drill every year when we have to practice it. We have to read a social story and just kind of warn them before we actually do it. And then also we talk about some ways that they can help cope with it, so put their hands over their ears, things like that. So we did discuss this with the parents as well. These are just some other ways that we talked about trying to help their child if they do suffer from getting very scared from loud noises. And then we also did include a sensory break for the parents. So they actually, we're not going to make you do it tonight, but they got up and they sang this song with us, and that's just something that we do with the kids as well during the school day.
All right. Every child is born with their own way of approaching the world. That is what we call their temperament. A child with a cautious temperament may be one that is resistant to change and trying new things. A child that is slow to warm, or that one that is happy to play by themselves or play with just a familiar adult. So a cautious child needs more time and more support to make transitions. They can benefit from routines that help them feel more comfortable with their world around them. And some of the activities that we plan to help a cautious child are ones that include a regular scheduled event, music events, and gross motor play. Specifically, large motor or gross play outside really helps a cautious child. The spirited child is one that is impulsive, reacts, easily overreacts, and reacts without thinking. Things that can support a spirited child would be items with a lot of movement, swinging, rocking, fewer words, so less of the auditory input is good for a spirited child, as well as compression and hugs can be very helpful.
So next we look at children who are socially challenged. These are the children, it's hard for them to wait, hard for them to sit for a long time in a classroom situation or at a party. So some of the strategies are involve them in gross motor activity. By research, gross motor activity help to promote engagement and help a child to be able to focus better. And also during our school day, like in circle time or music, also we also provide them with breaks, like go out, have a drink of water, or movement breaks, and etc. Other things is that, like when a child is sitting in class, give them some hand fidget material, things that they can touch, and also give them small movement, like sitting on a cushion, they have a little bit of movement, or sit on a beanbag chair or a therapy ball. And also, who says that the child has to sit on the floor all the time? So they can also choose where they sit. They can stand for a little bit, or they can sit on a chair, or can sit on a beanbag. Other things are like a comforting music to help a child to calm down, a quiet area, social story to tell ahead of time to teach a child proper behavior for certain situation, and a schedule is a plan. And schedules are very powerful. I mean, we all use schedule. We all take notes. First thing in the morning, I do this, then I do that. It's very powerful for a person to organize and organize their day and know what is coming up. Next is children that hard to take changes, and when there's change in the day, change in their routine, sometimes very uncomfortable. Actually, it's really not only for children, for adults as well. Some of the things that, like I said before, with the gross motor activity actually is very helpful in a lot of situations, help a person to organize their mind, and it's also effective for adults as well. Other things, like I said, the hand fidget schedule, and also a timer to let a child know that when there's an end to the activity, when does it start and there's an end to it, and so they have some idea that how much longer they have to stay in that task. Changes like what Mrs. Deck said, that one of them would change, and also if a child get anxious, suck on a sport bottle or chewing gum, that would help a child to calm down as well. But I caution you, don't warn a child about fire drill on the day of the fire drill, because you will hear it all morning. When is the fire drill? When is the fire drill? I mean, some of the situation like a fire drill, because it's something that if there's a real fire, they're not going to know about it. And then the more you tell them, the more anxious they become. And picky eaters, and we all know that some of our children, they're very sensitive to certain texture or certain taste. So what we suggest is that involve them in food preparation, have some movement break right before mealtime, and use a tray that with compartments so all the food are not mixed together. So they can if they don't like tomato and then it's mixed with other food, then it will influence them not eat the other one either. And also make gradual changes. Like I put a photo here that shows that the Ritz Bits is the small Ritz cracker, and then you increase to a real size Ritz cracker, and then this is actually a real situation. Now this child is eating a cheese sandwich right now. So, and also like introduce one food item at a time, that would also help. And also there are a lot of literature on teach children and talk about eating a variety of food, and also play with toy food, and also give them mouth fidget as well. Give them more oral sensory input, using a electric toothbrush to brush their mouth to desensitize them, so that they will be able to take more texture and more taste. So at the end of that evening, all our parents, they make one of each of these gadgets. They make a sensory bag and a sensory bottle and a stress ball to take home. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's very interesting. I find that's very interesting, very interesting. I'd like to see that again. That was.
And these strategies last for years and years sometimes. They go on in various forms, and
Oh,
so
yeah.
they're useful to learn and learn well at an early age, because oftentimes as a parent you'll be implementing them throughout their at each grade level in a different form. So.
Like that, organizing yourself. I don't know about any of you, if you've ever spent any time with like a junior high child, but they could certainly use a refresher course on that. And I mean, so could all of us, but that was very good. I like that.
Thank you.
That was very good.
Thank you.
Okay, then we'll move to the consent agenda. Any questions? Comments? The chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Number 1, personnel recommendations. Support staff, Natalie Pinsky, teaching assistant, Westmont Junior High School. And stipend position, Richard Panicek, varsity girls basketball coach, Westmont High School. 2, approval of payroll deductions. 3, approval of November 2017 expenditure report. 4, ratification of October 2017 regular payroll. And 5, approval of board travel expenses.
So moved. Second.
And roll call, please.
Mr. Armstrong,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Ms. Wilson,
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, the first item for discussion is presentation of monthly financial statements.
Okay, attached for you are the October financial statements, and during the month of October, we received $500,000 from the state, and $120,000 of that was for the fiscal year 18 general state aid payments, and we finally received fourth quarter payments from FY17 in the amount of $379,000. There are still almost $52,000 of FY17 payments vouchered but not yet released. And we received another installment of the 2016 tax levy in the amount of $641,000. Total taxes collected to date are $22.4 million. So we've collected 97.28% of our tax levy so far this year. And again, of those state payments, 376,000 were in the ed fund, and we received, that was in the ed fund, and then 252,000 of that was for FY17. And again, the 52,000 that is vouchered is for the ed fund for FY17, and then the state's vouchered 80,000 of FY18 payments in the ed fund that they have not released yet. And then in the transportation fund, we received the fourth quarter of FY17 mandated categoricals in the amount of $124,000, and they have vouchered the first quarter of fiscal year 18, $123,000, and that has not been released to us yet. Then for expenditures, the ed fund expenditures are comparable to the prior year averages. And again, the O&M fund is comparable to prior year where it should be. Last year, we had spent 23.8% of our funds, and this year we're at 27.4%. And then transportation fund, again, varies depending upon the receipt of vendor invoices, and we're still waiting on our Subtran invoices like we were last year. So, and then you will notice also that, the other reports are attached, but I don't know if you've taken a close look at the investment schedule, but we do have $22.5 million invested right now. This is, our high point in time with our cash balances. So we have a lot of things in CDs and some money markets and things like that, and then you'll see the investment balance decline over as the months go on because, until we receive our taxes again in May and June. So does anyone have questions?
No. No. Okay. Then the next item is presentation of fiscal year 2017 audit.
All right, and I would like to introduce, we have Susan Jones and Elizabeth Gasparini from Miller Cooper here to present the audit, and we work very closely with them on the audit.
Good evening. So I'm going to take you through the financial statements. You should have the booklet right here, and Elizabeth's going to take you through the letters after I go through the highlights of the financial statements. In your booklet, there are various tabs, and past the financial section tab begins our audit opinion. Again, this year, the district received an unmodified opinion, which is the highest level of assurance the district can receive, and that's consistent with the prior year. And that audit opinion goes on pages 1 through 4. Past the audit opinion on pages 5 through 19, it's management's discussion and analysis. This is prepared by the district management, and it goes through the overall highlights, financial highlights of the district for fiscal year 2017 in comparison to 2016. It also talks about some industry challenges that the district considers with everything going on in the state in the last couple pages. But turning past management's discussion analysis on page 19 really begins the basic financial statements. On page 19 is the statement of net position as of June 30th, 2017. And this is what's referred to on a full accrual basis, so all the long-term assets of the district are included on this page, as well as the long-term liabilities. Overall, the statement is relatively consistent with the end of the year, June 30th, 2016, except in cash and investments, the balance at the end of 2017 was about $20.5 million, versus at the end of 2016, it was about $28 million. And that was because in 2016, you had the 2016 bond issue where the proceeds were sitting in cash and investments. And then during fiscal year 17, the capital projects were executed and the money was spent down. So you can see, although the cash and investment balance is down, construction in progress is way up at $8.3 million for all the capital expenditures occurring during 2017. At the end of the year, net position was $29.2 million, which was consistent with the previous year. Turning to page 20 is the statement of activities. And this shows all the revenues earned offset by all the expenses incurred on a full accrual basis during 2017. Overall, the district was really very close to break even. There was a decline in net position of just $8,900. A couple things I want to point out is state retirement contributions. You can see they were $10,274,000 in 2017, and those state retirement contributions, if you recall, are kind of like a flow-through. They're shown as revenue and expenses in this statement. They increased from $6.5 million in 2016 to $10.3 million in 2017. So if you look at total expenses, was $37.4 million. Last year, that was about $33.7 million, and its majority of that increase is related to these state retirement contributions that are kind of a flow through this statement of activities. Turning to page 21 and 22 is the fund statements, which shows each of the major funds of the district. The long-term assets and long-term liabilities are taken out of this statement. You can see each of the district's major funds are in a positive fund balance position. On a combined basis, fund balance was $19.3 million. Turning to page 23, This is just a reconciliation of the full accrual statements that we went through on the statement of financial position in comparison to the balance sheet, and the significant reconciling items are the capital assets and long-term liabilities of the district. But then turning on to page 24 and 25, this shows all the revenues and expenditures of the district during fiscal year 2017. You can see prior to other financing sources, the general fund had expenditures in excess of revenues of about $149,000. And then you can see the various financing activities that occurred. The working cash fund proceeds were abated of about $8.1 million, which was put into the O&M fund that was later transferred to the capital projects fund to pay for all the capital expenditures that occurred during fiscal year 2017. At the end of the year, fund balance was almost 26 million, or excuse me, was about $19.3 million. Revenues were less than expenditures of about $6.7 million during fiscal year 2017. Does anybody have any questions on those statements? So if you flip forward to page 29, page 29 through 70 go through the notes to the financial statements. There were no significant accounting policies changed or adopted during fiscal year 2017, so the overall disclosures are consistent. If you wanted a deeper dive into certain account balances, Note E has a row forward of all the capital asset activity, and that's on page 43, and Note F has a row forward of all the long-term debt activity that went on to the district during fiscal year 2017. But again, there were no significant changes to the accounting policies that the district follows during 2017. If you flip forward to page 71, this begins the required supplemental information. The next couple pages is more information related to the IRMRF pension fund as well as the TRS pension fund. You can see on page 71, there's 3 years of information here, and the total funding of that pension liability is about 93% for the IRMRF fund on page 71. And if you recall, a couple years ago, the unfunded pension liabilities of TRS and IMRF had to be recorded in the statement of net position. Next year, under GASB 75, the unfunded OPEB liabilities, which is about $1.3 million for the district, will be recorded in that statement of net position next year. Moving past some of that deeper dive in the pension information, beginning on page 76 through the rest of the report, is really more detailed information by major fund of all the detailed descriptions of the revenues and expenditures in comparison to the budget and prior year. So if you wanted some more information on fluctuations year over year, you could look at all the activity from page 76 on. And then on page 110, on pages 110 through 112, this lists out all the activity funds of the district. So at the end of 2017, the district was holding cash for the various activities in the district of about $169,000. And it's broken out by school as well as the various activities at each of the schools. And then that last tab in the audit report on page 113 is just various demographic information that's included as part of the financial statements and additional information. Does anybody have any questions on the financial statements? Okay, I'll turn it over to Izzy to go through our letters.
So I'm going to, excuse me, I'm going to go through the longer of the two letters. The one that says our responsibility at the top is the one I'm going to start with. So this goes, I'm just going to go section by section. This says that our audit is performed in accordance with government auditing standards and the uniform guidance as the district's required to have a single audit. At the bottom of page 1, other information and documents containing audited financial statements. This just says, you know, should you include the financial statements in another document, you would have to contact us first, for example, like a bond issuance. On page 2, we completed the audit within the planned scope and timing and, you know, ran into no issues there. The significant accounting policies in the middle of page 2 show the only GASB statement that was adopted during the current year, which was not applicable to the district. And then at the bottom of page 2 is GASB 75, as Susan mentioned, which relates to the OPEB plan. On page 3 shows GASB's 86 and 87, which will be applicable in future years as well. The bottom of page 3 shows the significant accounting estimates and significant financial disclosures, which both relate to the OPEB plan, the net pension liabilities for IMRF and TRS, and the self-insurance. And then at the bottom of page 3, we would be required to disclose any significant difficulties that we ran into during the audit, and we ran into none. Turning to page 4, we would be required to communicate to you any uncorrected and corrected misstatements. There were no uncorrected or corrected misstatements identified by us. We had no disagreements with management during the course of our audit. We've worked well with Kim for several years now, and she and her team have been great. And then, you know, no other findings or issues. So on to our second letter, which is the shorter of the 2 letters. At the beginning, it defines the different levels of deficiencies. During our audit, we noted no deficiencies.
Izzy,
Yeah.
That second letter is in board docs.
Oh, I apologize. So we do not design our audit procedures to test internal controls, but should we note any deficiencies in internal controls, we'd be required to communicate them. We noted no deficiencies in internal control during our audit. However, there is one item that we've included in here that we call management advice, and it's just something that we wanted to bring up as a talking point regarding technology. We are seeing a lot of sophisticated phishing scams, emails being intercepted, and other things at our commercial, governmental, and not-for-profit clients. So we just want everyone to be aware that technology is something that needs to be constantly monitored and can't just be evaluated every year or every other year. So we noted no issues during our audit. It's just something that we wanted to mention. Any questions? Thank you.
That piece that you were just talking about, is that something that you say that's a common thing that you're talking with all the districts about?
We are
Just
telling
that?
every district, every not-for-profit client, and every commercial client. There is no one we're not talking about it with.
So this isn't something just in our district?
No, or just school districts in
Okay.
general, it's everybody.
It's
Okay.
just that as we go into so many different organizations, and it's alarming to me, like, how sophisticated these scammers are getting with regard to if somebody's on vacation, they know it, and they intercept emails from, like, maybe a controller to a CFO about wire transferring payroll, and, you know, maybe they say, oh, you know, I'm on the airplane, but if you could just send it now, that would be great, and they're able to intercept those emails, so it really looks like the email's coming from the CFO to the controller, and they're not. And part of it is, you know, you have those Outlook calendars, and you say, I'm on vacation, please contact my administrative assistant if you need anything, and they're constantly monitoring those email traffic to kind of find where there's weaknesses, or people are out, or a susceptible situation. And it's just something that we think, you know, all people should just be aware of, because it's constantly changing and constantly new scams are, you know, and it's costing companies a lot of money.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda, believe it or not, is the 2018-2019 school calendar.
Yes, the calendar committee met, and they have two options for the board to take a look at. They're presented tonight for board input, and then would look for board approval at the December meeting. But the two options, calendar A and calendar B, there's not a significant amount of differences between the two. They both have the same starting date. The biggest difference is calendar A has two more non-attendance days, April 1st and 2nd. And that's because Tuesday, April 2nd, 2019 will be an election day. We use our junior high as a polling place, and so, if there's concern about it being a polling place and having students in attendance, in the past, we've done a pretty good job of keeping the voters separate from the students in the building. And then calendar B doesn't have those two non-attendance days. The committee does prefer calendar B because there was a little bit of concern about the number of days off that second semester, and particularly April, when we were trying to prepare our students for PARC, SAT, AP, all those significant tests that our students are required to take. And so their preference would be B. But if the board has any additional input I can bring back to the committee, I'll be happy to do so.
Why not just extend the school year 2 more days?
That's what would happen. The school year would be extended, but those testing windows are determined by the state, and we can't alter those. So we would miss 2 days of instruction leading up to the PARC and the SAT.
So this shows the last day of school before Memorial Day. It says, so like the 28th, May 27th is Memorial Day, and then May 28th shows, goes into those emergency days?
Yeah, I'll confirm that, but that could very well be.
And starting on, for the students, would be
The 22nd of August.
When did we start this year?
It's about the same time.
Well, I always have concern bringing strangers into the building during school days. I mean, it's getting worse and worse out there, so I do have some concern about that. But obviously, testing days are very important also, so I don't know where to draw the line there. But there's definitely concern there. But normally, whatever the committee wants, I'm normally for. I mean, it's their opinions, but I am concerned about bringing people into the school building with students there.
Well, I would have to, I agree with what Kevin's saying, and I do see that the way the spring break falls is then right before that. So there would be a possibility, not perfect, but coming back on the 1st, and then not having school on the 2nd, and then having school on the 3rd. Not
Right, it's not ideal.
But I also have concern about, where do they vote at the junior high? Where is the voting? Is it in the Commons?
It's like behind the Commons.
The gymnasium, right?
Yeah, it's
It's in the gym?
typically right, the gym, and then they enter the hallway that's behind the Commons. That takes them to the gym.
So they don't come in the gym door and go out the gym door?
They do. There's like a vestibule that they come.
Yeah, on the north side of the building in the
Yeah.
parking lot, so they come and go through there, so there's the two hallway accents, so those doors are locked, right? I mean, they don't go into the commons areas at all, right?
Okay, so they come in, but, there's, where the gym is, there's 2 entrances to the Commons.
Well, that's what I'm saying, those doors are locked.
Those are locked.
Right.
And then what about the other doors? There's the other door out the gym to the
Right, on the other side, on the west wall.
other side of the,
That's
Those-
locked also, I assume?
Well, those doors, when you're inside the gym, it's a crash bar to go out into the hallway, so you really can't, it's against fire code to lock, like to do anything to prevent those crash bars from releasing. So you count on the individuals who are there monitoring the voting to make sure that people don't exit through the building, but they exit the way that they came in.
So that's really the concern then, because those other doors can be locked, the ones that are leading into the commons areas, but the ones that are going into the hallway there, the panic bars on the gym side of the door, obviously we can't make
Right.
them physically locked. Okay,
That's troubling,
a little.
especially if we're relying on the people who are there for the
Matt, do you
voting.
vote in that building?
No. Well, unfortunately, it's right there, but I'm over at Maze Lake.
Okay. I'm just wondering what the setup's really like on the inside. I mean, are there tables and people put up in front of there, or is that voting booths over there where somebody could turn around and walk into the school? I mean, what is the
You know,
layout?
I can find out from either John Jonak or Mike McCosey.
I just want to feel a little more
The
comfortable,
layout
that's all.
is, I
Right.
think they share that with the school, what the layout is, but I can check.
Just,
There'd be some way of having an officer on duty. I mean, I know that would be a very taxing for the police department, but could the resource officer be there that day? Could somebody, you know, at least, I don't know, I just need to feel a little bit better about it. Normally, I don't have a problem using the schools, you know, for voting. I think it's important that the students see what goes on and how voting occurs. I mean, there's a very good lesson there, but in today's day and age, we have to be a little bit more protective of the students.
Sure.
And things that could happen. So I would just, I need a plan for those doors. Otherwise, I mean, I'm fine with having the attendance days and making it happen, because obviously testing is very important too, but I just, personally, I don't know how everybody else, personally, I need to feel a little bit more comfortable about that arrangement. I need a little bit more information.
And I can get that information and bring it back to the board.
yeah, I agree, because if it, again, I think the big, well, I agree with everything you said. I just, I have concern about what leaving that those are, that's a
Security of
big
those two
door,
doors to
just
just-
to the people who are working. And
Right.
generally, the people that are working, those are volunteers, and
Right.
they're doing their own thing, and that would just be a perfect time for, if somebody had bad intentions, that would be,
Right.
Yeah.
That's all. I just need to know what the plan is, or at least have some
Sure.
idea. Otherwise,
Sure,
I mean,
I
I'm
can get that
fine,
information.
I'm fine with option B and keeping the kids in school for those 2 days and giving them, you know, the better opportunity for leading up to those testing days. I think that's important, obviously. I'm sure the students would say 2 more days of vacation, but let's not. ask them.
yeah, yeah. Which testing is this, Kevin? You're saying that this is leading up to testing. Which,
The park exam is given in the spring. SAT's given in the spring. And those are both April testing dates. And then in May, you have AP testing.
yeah, okay. I was wondering if there was something that was right then.
It's not right then, but I would have to check what the actual testing dates are.
Okay.
But they do happen in April. They happen in that second semester.
Okay.
Okay, so we can just get a little more information.
Right.
That'd be
I'll
great.
get
Okay,
that
and
information.
spring break, that's just like, that's kind of set.
Right,
So
that's,
that's not something that you would move to accommodate that April 1st/2nd thing, right?
it could be moved. I'd have to go back to the calendar committee and find out what their thinking was with placing it when they did.
Just trying to think about
Well, you have to move it
options.
up earlier, not later, because you wouldn't want the
Right.
next week. Right, it would have to be
Right.
the previous week, the 18th.
Right, and I'm not saying even to do that. I'm
Right.
just looking at what's in front of us here in
Sure.
terms of that. Okay. I have one other question, one other request. When we finish this and we put this together, could we just, I know we've been doing this for a number of years, but could we put PLC on the Wednesdays? I do see that the SIP days are
Right,
there.
right.
But, because that question comes up every year, especially with new families. If they don't see it there, then there's all this question of whether it's a PLC day, and,
Sure, we can do that.
okay, thank you. Okay, any other questions on the calendar? Then the next topic, cost benefit of district initiatives.
If the board remembers when, at our last board self-evaluation with Barb Tony, one of the things she recommended was that the board start to look at cost benefit as they're approving different programs for the district, as they're approving possibly different consultants. And so I put together somewhat of a framework for the board for your review and to make any suggestions, additions. But essentially, it's what would be brought to the board in terms of proposal would be answer to these key questions and then any other questions that the board would want to add to it. But it essentially starts with, okay, obviously if we're coming forward with a program with a consultant, there's some problem, some goal we have in mind. There's something that we want to seek improvement on, or there's a reason why we're recommending it. So sharing that with the board, why we're doing it. Of course, when it comes to anything in terms of cost, and when we start talking about our levy in a little bit later this evening, and we start looking at those revenue sources, is this a one-time cost? Is there a recurring cost? Have we identified funds that would be dedicated to the initiative? Essentially, can we afford the program? And then what do we identify as the benefits, either direct or indirect to participants in the district, and then itemize the costs, and then also identify all the benefits for the board. And then ultimately, what can the board expect reporting back to the board from the administration in terms of short-term progress, midterm progress, long-term progress, and what metrics essentially are we going to be using to measure. And then I just gave you a couple of, some examples. There's the quantitative. Those are things that we can actually measure. If our goal is to increase enrollment, then, we should be able to come back to the board and say, as a result of implementing this program, our enrollment has increased by a certain percentage. Or if we're looking to increase student achievement, we should be able to demonstrate that increase. And then it also gets into what would be termed qualitative. They don't necessarily, you can't measure them in terms of percentages, but at the same time, they can be just as important in terms of improving morale, self-esteem of students, sense of involvement, and overall greater student engagement and more time on activities. And so these are, basically what the board would anticipate then when something's brought to the board for your consideration for approval. It would be, we would make sure we can answer all these questions for the board. And so that, that wouldn't preclude the board from asking additional questions at the time, but at least, going into it, all these things would have been discussed, would have been answered prior to bringing it to the board, and the board would see those answers in what was being presented to the board.
So this would be basically a pre-approval to the process?
Correct.
And then, we're basically pre-approving what we're going to be using as the outcomes measurements?
Right.
Okay.
Right. Because just about everything we do, there's an associated cost, and the board is always we come to you and say, okay, we need you to approve this cost. And, through Barb Tony, it was a very good suggestion. She says, maybe as a district, we really want to give the board more information so that they know, okay, yes, we're being fiscally responsible. This is going to make a positive impact on the district. Therefore, we can wholly support it.
I have a question.
Sure.
So, first of all, thank you for this, because this is something we've talked about, and I think it's extremely important because, like you're saying, once we have to be good stewards of the money that is here, and why do we want to do something, and then to see if it's working. So following up on Joel's question, at the end it says, once the board reach consensus, the administrative team will complete a cost benefit on the most recent district initiative. So this is something that we can also use to look at
Right.
what we're currently doing. So this would not necessarily be only used for going forward.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, we would look at, all-day kindergarten.
Right.
Or something like
Right.
that, right?
Right.
Is that what
We
we're
could
looking-
use that to do that, all-day
Okay.
kindergarten, do language, we
Or
could do
whatever,
those
yeah.
things. Also, in the past, I think it's been, the board has asked, hey, there's this name, and we're paying X thousands of dollars, what exactly is this? Oh, that's a consultant we brought in to work with our grade levels on literacy.
Right.
And then, the board is, very trusting, and they say, okay, well, we can now, if the board would like, we could go and say, okay, we're using this math consultant. Here's basically why we're using math consultant. Here's how we're going to measure the effectiveness. So even though it's already occurring, we can still, if the board would like for us to take a look at some of those initiatives, put together the information and bring it to the board for discussion.
Yes, 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 and yes. There was a lot in there, but I think that is good, because every once in a while, because contrary to what people think, the board is not involved in day-to-day,
Right,
everyday decisions. So a lot of times when something's presented to us, we might not know about that person, but this is a great idea to find out. Or if like the kids come home and they talk about some new thing they're doing, and the parents have questions, whatever, if we do something like this, it shows, like, why did we decide that this was a necessary thing? And then, does it work?
Right.
Or
I think-
what are the challenges that are still there or whatever, so.
I think measuring on some things are going to be difficult. Like, I can't imagine bringing in a consultant for 3 or 4 days of activity and then trying to say, this is the measurement that we're demonstrating that it improved X, Y, and Z. So I think you have to be careful about,
Right,
what you're using to measure success of that, so it doesn't get to be too difficult.
Sure.
Because I could see some things just being, how do you really know? Or, how can 3 days of activity produce this type of a result? So that it really is an appropriate assessment.
Well, that brings up another thing, just because as I was thinking out loud, thinking to myself, not out loud, like you talk about the qualitative, and so that is, there's just as much there. Because I just think about what just this past weekend was Snowball.
Right.
So that is something that our district has embraced, the whole entire snow program. And that would be one of those things that I would see would really fall under that, because there are costs associated with it and stuff, but yet part of the reason that we do it as a district kind of can fall under those things
Right.
too. So I like that there's quantitative and qualitative, because like Joel's saying, there might not be an exact A, B, C, D thing, so. So what are you looking for from us, Kevin? Just
if the board is comfortable with these questions, or if there are additional questions, or if you need time to kind of review it and think about it, you can always email me, your thoughts. But basically, that's what I'm looking for, is feedback, and whether or not this you think will cover most of the bases the board is looking for, or are there some other areas, some other questions that maybe you'd want us to consider as well?
I hate to phrase it this way, Kevin, but I'd almost like to see a better example. Could we take a current program and run it through the questions here and show me an example that way? Like maybe take all-day kindergarten or dual language, pick one, your choice, okay?
Sure. I can
And
do
show
that.
me an example of what it would look like better?
Sure.
Otherwise, all this looks great. In my mind, I need to see a better example.
That's a great idea.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a good idea, that's a good idea. Okay, any other comments on that then? All right. The next item is the State of the District presentation.
Just give me a second to one presentation down. Well, this evening, I'm going to present to the board our State of the District. Recently, the school board, Illinois State School Board, released the 2017 report cards, and school report cards. And so most of the information that we use to put together our State of the District comes from that report card data. And so now we can officially share that information. And so the areas that I'll cover are finance summary. My guess is Kim in a few minutes may cover some of the same material. Then some of our student information, our demographics, talk a little bit about the class of 2017 and their profile. Then get into some of our student data, our PARC, SAT, and MAP data, and then our accomplishments as a district, touch base a little bit on PLCs and the work we're doing there, and then talk with the board some of our next steps as we start to dig into some of this data that we just received. So first, in terms of our finances, it's no surprise, we've heard this many times whenever we're talking about the budget, the levy, our audit, but when you look at funding for our school district, local property taxes is a little over 83% of our funding. And again, this comes from the school report card. With the most recent funding model, this is why as a district, we really need to look at our funding. The new model, the 4-tier system, we won't get the final numbers for a month or two, but we already are anticipating we're not going to be receiving additional funding from the state. We'll be held harmless. We won't lose funding from the state. We might get a slight increase, but nothing significant. So the local property taxes are so important for us, and our legislators are again talking about a property tax freeze. Right now, a 2-year tax freeze, which sounds very positive, very attractive, but at the same time, for a district like ours that is so reliant on local resources, that would be one other challenge we would have to take a look at as we look at our school district and the services that we provide. And we'll be talking about that in greater detail as we get those final numbers from the state. But one of the things we're going to share with our community is what the state is talking about is adequate level of funding. And in most cases, that's not what a school community wants. They don't want an adequate level of education. They want excellence. They want something exceptional. And so sometimes that requires additional funding beyond what is termed adequate level of funding. In terms of our expenditures, no surprise here. If you look at the education fund, that's 71% of our expenditures, which is what you want to see as a school. You want to see most of the funds going towards the education of our students. I can always make a case for everything we do educates the whole child. Operations, that's maintaining the climate of our buildings, that's maintaining our buildings. Transportation is getting our students to and from school. Debt service is how we were able to make our schools more secure. So all of these things contribute to the education of our students. And the other thing I always like to remind our community about is we're a service organization. We don't produce a physical product. Some may argue lifelong learners, that's your product, curriculum, that's your product. But the reality is most of our spending is in the form of salary and benefits, which is the education fund, that's 71%. And that's because, again, we're a service organization. And that's where we want to see our fund or our spending take place. In terms of our demographics, this kind of gives you an idea of the makeup of our students in our schools. Not a significant change from prior years. All the percentages are right about where they were for the prior year, so no significant changes there. In terms of our class of 2017, again, pretty typical from prior years. Roughly 89% of our students go on to college, either a 2 or 4-year education. 7% enter the workforce, 4% will attend a technical school. 97.5% graduation rate is excellent. And that is actually up from last year was 94%. So we actually improved upon an already excellent graduation rate. And so really we, and again, that starts at the pre-K level when you're a unit district, getting those students ready to learn and moving through our educational system so that they can continue to be successful. And our staff works very hard at getting our students ready for their senior year. The SAT, this is the first time the SAT was given as the statewide assessment. If the board remembers, we're given ACT, and so that was the target. Then they transitioned to, that's when it was part of the Prairie State exam. Then they transitioned to PARC, and PARC was a very different test, and now we're at SAT. So this was the first time our staff was administering the SAT, our first time our students, 100% of our student population taking the SAT. Our composite was 1,059, which puts us at 113 out of 715 high schools that took the exam. Public schools have to administer the exam, public high schools. Private schools do not. And so there's roughly 800, I think around 850 high schools in the state of Illinois. So not all of them are taking the exam. That puts us in about the top 16% with the exam. Math, we're at about 132 out of 715, and the language arts, English, we're at 536 out of 715. I'm fully anticipating, knowing our high school staff, our high school administration, I'm firmly anticipating those scores increasing next year. They're doing a lot of formative assessment with the SAT. They're making sure the curriculum is aligned to the SAT. They're doing item analysis, identifying the gaps with our students. And so in both areas, math and language arts, I'm anticipating us increasing our ranking in the state. ACT, our students still take ACT. It's just not 100% of our juniors as in past years. And you can see our ACT 22.55, which over the last several years is our highest composite SAT score.
Kevin, which year was it, do you know which year it switched where all students were taking it and then?
I think it was where the dip is. I think it was around 2013 is when all students began
Because they went to
taking it.
Park, or they went to a different test?
They went to Prairie State.
Okay.
And Prairie State was two components. One was ACT, and the other one was called Work Keys, which was aligned to ACT. All of our students took that. So it was right around 2013
Okay.
that occurred. And then in terms of, we talk about the 5 essential surveys, our parents will start getting bombarded with emails from our schools. Originally, it was going to be starting right now, but we just received an email that there's a delay on the release of the 5 essentials. So as soon as it becomes available, we'll start asking our parents to complete that important information, because between the staff surveys, there's also another change prior to this year. It was grades 6 through 12. Students took the survey. This year, districts had the option of allowing 4th and 5th graders. We opted in. So at Miller and Manning, our 4th and 5th graders will be taking the survey as well. And so our parents, our students, 4 through 12, and then our staff all take that survey. And ultimately, that tells a school how well they are positioned for school improvement, based upon several different factors. And you can see that the high school and junior high are well organized. Manning and Miller are organized for school improvement, which are the 2 highest categories. And so that means that our buildings are well positioned to take on that school improvement.
Can I ask a question before you leave there?
Yes.
This might sound ridiculous, is well organized better than organized?
Yes.
Okay.
Well organized is the highest organized.
Well organized, okay.
Yes.
It's, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And if you want, I could come back to another meeting and give you a little bit more information on the 5 essentials. It's also part of the report card information when you pull it up. Then in terms of our student data, first of all, with MAP testing, and this kind of gives you the, over a span of several years, the performance at each grade level. And as you go down the diagonal, you can kind of take a look at cohorts as they move through the district. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to take the map and with it help us to align ourselves to the PARC exam as well, because the PARC exam it's given one time. Originally, it was supposed to be given 3 times over the course of the year, but because of financial constraints with the state, it's only given 1 time a year. So it's very difficult to get that information during the summer and then use that to help work with students. And so we're essentially using MAP, and so we're taking a look at our students and where they're at in terms of the state standards, meeting, exceeding. And so we really want our students in that blue-green area, prior to that state test. And then it helps we can take this data, and this is what they do at each of the buildings. Each classroom teacher can look at their individual students and see where they fall. And then they can then adjust their teaching to those students and their strengths, their weaknesses. They differentiate their instruction. And then when we test again in the winter, we take a look at where our students are as a building, as a grade level, as individual students, and then we do a spring testing as well.
Kevin, help me understand this real quickly
Sure.
here. Just as an example, I'm looking at the 7th grade on this chart, 2014-15, 2015-16, 2016-17. So 2014-15, it says 80, and it says 81% and higher, and it's blue. And then 2015-16, same number, 80 blue. But then 2016-17, the number goes up to 87, but it goes down to green.
You know what? That's just coded wrong.
Okay, because there's a number of examples here. If you go up a couple, it says 54 yellow. No, I'm not reading that one right, but
Yeah.
that's just, okay. That's just coded wrong. That's all you're telling me. Okay.
Yeah, so, we'll go through and
That's fine.
make those adjustments. And then with math, we do the same thing. We see where our students are at, and then again, we take a look at the item analysis, see where our students are, there are gaps in their learning, and then we in turn change our instruction so that we see each time that we give the map, we should see a greater percentage of students who are meeting and exceeding those standards.
Kevin, can I ask a question too? You had said something before about like if you go diagonally.
Right.
Could we see, as long as we're gonna look at them again with the color code, could we then do that where we could see like track, like a
Course.
class?
Sure,
Yeah,
sure, I can do that.
that would be good, just to see.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
I can do that. And then this is with the park, and we finally have the 3rd year of park data, so we can start taking a look at where our students fall on the park. And all of our grade levels perform above the state average on park. And so, and these are percentages, so, and this is what the state calls the different areas. So the green are students that met or exceeded. The yellow are students who approached expectations. So, there are areas that they did very well on, and then there are areas that they struggled on. And we can, and then the kind of that, I guess, beige color, those are students that partially met. So again, there's areas that they met expectations on, but then again, more areas than some of their fellow students that they did not. And then the red are students who did not meet it on any of the standards. They didn't meet any of the standards. Those are the kids who are in the red. What we are able to do now, and this is kind of, it takes a few years of the state, and they've tweaked the test a couple times, is now we're able to do an item analysis on every question of the test, what standard that question addressed, and how our students performed on those questions. And so right now we're in that process of looking at all that data to find out, okay, where in our curriculum are we not addressing effectively some of these standards so that we can make those changes. And again, I think as a result, we'll see those percentages increase. And that's the composite, that's the overall. They do a breakdown on the language arts as well, English class, reading and writing, and you can kind of see where our percentages fall. And then they also, we have the math as well, and where our students fall as well. So, and again, in each of those areas, we can do that item analysis in math, in language arts, and that's what our focus is right now.
Okay, so I have a question, and I don't know. So let's just look at the composite for a minute. So let's just go to 8th grade. So on the far right, so you have 8th grade, and then you have 2015, 16, and 17. So is this the 8th graders in 2015, 56 exceeded?
Right.
Okay, and then 2016, the next 8th group of 8th
Correct.
graders.
Correct.
Okay, that's
Correct.
okay. That's what I was trying to see with that. So this isn't
So it's not our current 8th
Not that-
graders moving through each year. No.
right. Okay.
No, it's each year, 8th grade, how they
Okay.
perform.
Again, that would also be an interesting thing to see here, if we look at
Well-
that, because then you see, well, you only have 3 years.
Right, we have 3 years. But the other thing, like, as I said, we just got the information, got the data. One of the things we're doing as well is, each of these grade levels have different subgroups. There are students who are testing who are ELA students, or ALL students, English language learners. We have our low-income students who are testing, our students with IEPs. So we want to also look at the data from that perspective to make sure within our subgroups we're meeting their needs as well. Because there may be a population that's performing very well, but there's a gap in those other students. And again, we would look at that as they move through our district to see, are we closing that achievement gap as they move through? So that's the other thing we'll be looking at as well and that's information we can bring back to the board as well as we start to break it down deeper and do a stronger data dive into it. And then in terms of our accomplishments, again, our graduation rate, the highest we've had in our district's history, 97.5. The junior high, as you know, has a student service and learning requirement. It's one of the few junior highs that require that for graduation. And 100% of our students met their required number of hours. And if you remember from John Jonak's remarks at graduation, far exceeded the number of hours that were required as a school. I mean, the students really did a nice job. For the 3rd year in a row, our Early Childhood Center received the Gold Circle of Quality, which is, again, based upon the curriculum, the work that's being done in our schools. We had 55 AP scholars, which is the highest number of AP scholars we've ever had, and we had 243 AP tests passed, which again is the highest that our district has ever had. And again, that's allowing, some schools, AP is kind of there's a gatekeeper. Certain students are not allowed, but in our district, if students are willing to take on that challenge, we're willing to support them. For the 3rd time, our high school has been ranked in the Washington Post Most Challenging School Index, and it's one of in the top 2% of all high schools in the U.S. and top 1% for the state of Illinois. John Jonak was the DuPage Area Principal of the Year, and of course Jack Boulderman, not only DuPage Area Principal of the Year, he was the Illinois Principal of the Year and one of 3 national finalists for Principal of the Year. Some of the things we're doing in terms of our best practices, and this becomes part again of the evidence-based funding model. We have a full-day kindergarten program. It's not required by the state, but it's something we valued as a district. We have instructional coaches, which the strength to instructional coaches, it's embedded staff development. The instructional coaches are able to go in the classroom and help teachers with their instruction. We have summer learning opportunities for our students. We have embedded technology, and we've expanded one-to-one now at the upper levels is now through senior year, and we have almost enough devices at the elementary level where we almost have a one-to-one environment. Those students aren't able to bring the devices home, but within those classrooms we're pretty close to buy, and the way that we do that is as we're replacing devices, we refurbish those devices and bring them into the younger grades. We have a dual language program. We expand into 4th grade. This year, next year, we'll expand to 5th grade, and we already have our group is looking at that transition to junior high and what's that will look like for our district. So we're already looking at that. And then, of course, professional learning communities, providing our staff time to look at the data, to look at, again, gaps in our curriculum and formative assessments. As I mentioned before, our next steps, we're doing that item analysis of the PARCC and the SAT with our staff so that they know exactly the questions our students are struggling on and which they answer incorrectly most frequently. We're identifying which standards those questions are measuring, and then that in turn tells us, okay, these are gaps in our curriculum that we need to strengthen. We're creating formative assessments that are aligned to the state standards because, again, you don't want to wait till spring PARCC to find out where our students may stumble. We're coming up with our formative assessments. They're common formative assessments that also helps us to create consistency with our curriculum, because if all 4th graders are taking the same assessments, then within our classrooms we need to make sure that we're providing the same level of instruction or for them to do well in those assessments. Our professional learning communities are continuing to meet in grade level teams. We have increased articulation between our grade levels. Manning and Miller alternate. One week they meet at Manning all together. The next week they meet at Miller. We've seen increased alignment with our curriculum as a result. And again, that whole idea that we are creating common formative and summative assessments that are aligned to the Common Core, and then we're utilizing the map and other data to drive our instruction. We're providing staff development with the maps so that our teachers become more familiar with the tool and become more well versed at reading those reports and using those reports to modify their instruction. We continue to focus on critical thinking, problem solving, problem-based learning, and communication skills in all of our classrooms. Those are lifelong skills that the world of work are telling us our students need to have to be successful. We are focused on a meaningful strategic plan in which we have goals that are based on students reading at grade level as they exit each grade level, a B or higher in Math 1, which we used to call algebra. And that's a predictor of success in college if students can achieve that level of math proficiency. Students passing AP courses, and again, one of the reasons AP is important is because the data shows just taking an AP course, those students are more likely to complete college. If you take an AP course and take the test, you don't even have to pass the test, those students have an either greater possibility of success in college, and then if you pass one AP course, those students have the highest probability of completing a college degree. So that's why exposing our students to that level of rigor while they're in high school is so important. And then we're continuing to work on completing post-secondary exploration experiences through visiting college campuses, career exploration, inviting business people into our schools to meet with our students and share information about their careers so that our students can make better decisions about post-high school. So that kind of in a nutshell is our state of the district. I am working with the chamber in the village. If you remember, for a little while, we did one that was open to the community. They got away from that, but we're talking about that possibly in January, of doing another, probably tweak this presentation a little bit, but doing a state of the district that will be available to our business community and our local community as well. So any questions?
I just had a note that I didn't want to stop you when you were talking about that one thing, but the technology, I just to comment, the students that I know of and talk to, they do appreciate the new iPads that they, or the new devices that they have. They, you know, we switched them and they seem to find them easier to use and better than what we had before.
And
I kind of like hearing that kind of stuff, you
Right.
know?
We did go with the newest model with the Chromebooks for a couple of reasons. One is they're more durable, and because they have different, what's the word I'm looking for? Different features that do make them a little bit easier to use, and, you know.
And these students that I've heard from had the other ones. And
Right.
now so, I mean, we've already got a second generation, such as it is, you know, if that's what you want to call it. But that is a huge piece that we can offer to the kids, and that's worth talking about, that it's doing what we want it to do, so.
Right.
Okay, any other comments?
Thank you, Kim.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll work on, I know we want to look at longitudinal data, so I'll work on putting that together
Okay,
and bring that back to the board.
that's great, thank you, thank you.
You had mentioned in board report about a retreat, admin board retreat.
Yes.
So some of this data could be reviewed there as well.
Yeah, we can make that part of that.
Yeah.
A good time to kind of go over additional questions and a little deeper dive into some specific areas.
Yeah, we can definitely do that.
Are revealed as you guys look at the
Right.
bits and pieces.
Well, that'd be great. Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda, we are pulling for tonight, which is the policy first reading, and we will do that after the policy committee meets, and then we will put that back on agenda for a future meeting. Okay. Okay, the first action item is approval of authorization for treasurer to pay additional November 2017 bills. And Kim, do you want to just remind us again?
Yes, again,
What the-
because this month we only have one board meeting, and it's, earlier in the month, haven't received all of our routine bills and things that we need to pay for this month. So this just allows us to pay those types of things, outplaced tuition, our transportation, our utilities, those types of routine bills. And then we'll bring that listing to you at the next board meeting for you to see what we've paid.
Okay, any comments or questions? All right. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the authorization for the treasurer to pay additional November 2017 bills.
So moved.
Second.
And roll call, please.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, then the second item, first we're going to discuss the tentative 2017 tax levy.
All right, we'll wait for him to pull the presentation up. All right, good evening. We've got the 2017 levy recommendations for you this evening. And first we'll start and we'll review the school district levy process. And the first thing we do is project our revenues and expenditures for the next school year. And then we estimate our EAV and new value, and each year I meet, along with a lot of other business managers in the area, with the township assessors. And so we're both in York and Downers Grove Township. And so they give us an idea of where they're seeing property values trend and an idea of what our new construction will be, because both of those pieces of information are important in determining our levy. And then we review our budget and I look at the 5-year plan and, make sure things are still in line and how much revenue I think we'll need by fund. and then present the preliminary levy to the board, which we're doing tonight. And then we publish the truth in taxation notice if necessary. And again, in our district, we do that as a matter of course, because what we don't want to have happen is leave any tax money on the table. Because again, we just have estimates right now. We won't know until March what our true EAV and our new construction is. And so we want to make sure that we capture all the value that the district is entitled to. And then we hold the public levy hearing, which we'll do at our December board meeting. And then I file the certificate of tax levy by the last Tuesday in December. So the first one we're gonna do is look at the levy recommendations by fund. So in the education fund, we're looking at 19 million, special education 1.3 million, tort 135,000, O&M 2.9 million, transportation 1.5 million, IMRF 385,000, Social Security 450,000. So total of 25.67 in the operating funds, and then in the debt service almost 1.3 million. So a total levy of 26,969,569. Now, it's also important to know, this is, kind of what we call our balloon levy. We're not going to receive that much money, but this just gives us some flexibility to, if we need to make adjustments in one fund or another as we get closer to next year. So first of all, for the levy, we're limited by the property tax extension limitation law, also known as PTEL. And that allows our levy to be either 105% of the previous year's levy or the preceding year's CPI, which is 2.1% for the 2007 levy. So this is the first year that we're back into, something above 1%. We had a 0.7 and a 0.8% the last 2 years. So the 2017 tentative levy represents a 17.24% overall increase over last year's extension, and then 18.27% in our capped funds. And then again, this balloon levy protects the district from unforeseen changes in EAV and new growth. And then we're actually anticipating we're going to receive 2.31% overall and 2.45% in the capped funds. So again, if we look at this historically, and I like people to see this, you can see from 2010 through our estimate for 2017, the blue bars are what we ask for in our levy, but we actually receive significantly less. So, and again, just a matter of practice that we do that. So if you look at 2017, we're asking for 17.24%, but we estimate we're gonna receive 2.31%. And then the other thing I like to look at is the tax rate history. And we have from 2006 through the estimated rate for 2017. And if you look at 2016 through 2006, through 2008, you can see that our tax rate was, relatively low, still in the $3 range, and was decreasing over those years. That's because our EAV was increasing. Those were the housing boom and things like that. And then over the next several years, our EAV started decreasing, and we even, and as our EAV declined, our tax rate went up. And now, and you can see 2014 was our highest rate at 5.2246. And now the last couple years, we've started seeing increases in EAV again, and so our tax rate is going down. And then you can also see that our debt service, which is the blue line, the blue portion of the graph, has been relatively stable over the years. And then the other thing I put together for you is a comparison, a 2016 tax rate comparison to other unit districts. And then also in our area, there are a combination of high school and elementary districts. So when you look at just the unit districts, the CUSD 201's rate was 4.8256. And there's only one district that has a lower tax rate that's a unit district, and that's Elmhurst 205, and they have significantly more EAV than our district does. So you can see relative to Lisle, Wheaton, which is District 200, Naperville 203, and Indian Prairie 204, our district has a lower total tax rate. And when you compare us to the high school and elementary combos, again, Downers Grove 99 and Darien have a higher rate, and we're pretty comparable to Hinsdale and the Marker and Hinsdale and Darien combinations. And then when you look at, Hinsdale and Butler, you've got Oak Brook and some of those things. So again, a lot of property wealth in those districts. So the one thing we're going to do is we'll publish the Truth in Taxation notice, and that will be in the Liberty Suburban Chicago newspaper. That'll be published on Wednesday, November 29th. And then we'll hold the public hearing for the levy, which will be here at the Village Hall, and that will be on Tuesday, December 12th. And one other thing I wanted to point out, Kevin had mentioned earlier in his presentation about a property tax freeze proposal, a bill that's being proposed. It did pass the House. It's going to go to the Senate, but that probably won't be until January. And so when we look at our total tax levy from 2016 to 2017, they're looking at freezing the property taxes for 2017, that levy, which is the one we're talking about tonight. Now, the impact to our district will, based on our estimates, will be about $530,000 that the district will not receive if that happens. So I just want people to be aware that it's a pretty significant impact. And, unfortunately, it's in a year where we finally have a good CPI. And so it is a meaningful change to our district if that legislation gets passed.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Well, I was at a meeting last night and talking to people about this and this potential tax freeze, and where, a lot of us wear different hats, so, it might be nice to have your tax bill frozen for a while, but when you look at how that will really detrimentally affect the school district, because if we lose $500,000,
Right.
Our, ComEd's not gonna, their rate's not gonna go down, and, anything that we pay, the salaries and benefits, that's already structured to go up every year. So it's a difficult thing, and I know that on an individual basis it might sound really good, but when those of us in here that you put your board member hat on, it could be very difficult. I mean, it's real money we're talking there, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And we're saying they're talking 2 years, right?
We're talking 2 years, but honestly, I think if it were to get in place, I think it'd
Yeah.
be very difficult for them to allow the
Right,
property
yeah.
taxes to jump up then.
Right. And, I've obviously sent things to our legislators, saying, we're opposed to this. We may be reaching out to our community to do that as well. And you filed a testimony against the bill.
That would be a great thing for us to look into, doing something to speak, especially since you have some numbers that show that's a lot of money. And that's unfortunate. It's just like, remember when they started the toll booths, and that was only gonna be a couple of years?
Right.
And I don't know, every time you go by, they're still collecting tolls, so, All right, thank you.
Right, thanks.
All right. So now the chair will entertain a motion to approve the tentative 2017 tax levy as presented.
So moved. Second.
And roll call, please.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion carried. Okay, superintendent's report?
I have several items in my report. You can tell we're getting to a busy time of year, but it's also a fun time of year. First, on Monday, November 20th, will be the annual high school Thanksgiving feast. Lunch will be served at 11:38 a.m. and 12:37 p.m. Thank you to Steve Cashman, who's the architect for the district, because he has generously agreed again this year to sponsor that event. That was one of the events that was, years ago, the district was doing cost reduction, that was kind of on the chopping block. Steve always tells the story. He was in the audience. He was going to be doing a presentation, and he heard that, and afterwards he said, hey, I'll pay for that. I don't want to see the school lose that event. To tell you how much the seniors appreciate it, normally, if you recall, that event would take place this Thursday. We have a group of seniors who will be out of the building, and they approached Jack Balderman, the principal, and asked, because this would be their last one, is there any way the date could be changed so that they could attend? And so it was agreed that it would be moved to Monday, the 20th. So our students truly appreciate it as well. If any board members would like to attend, Francesca, our food service director, always reserves a couple of tables for guests. If you could let Rima know, and she can communicate that to Francesca. And I know, Maria, I think, Matt, you've attended a couple. If you can work it into your schedule, it really is a great event that few schools have.
It is wonderful, and it's also really, really nice to see the students come up to Steve Cashman and thank him.
Yes.
Like, they really like this, and it's a very nice thing, so, great.
And then something else that's taking place right now, if you recall, Westmont, the village of Westmont entered into a sister city program with Hsinchu County in Taiwan. And as part of that, there's also an exchange program between Westmont High School and the high school in Hsinchu County. And right now, the students arrived on November 10th. There are 8 students from Taiwan and a chaperone who are living with some of our school families and shadowing our students. And so finding out a little bit about the high school life of our students, as well as about our culture. They'll be touring the city of Chicago, and we'll experience an American Thanksgiving as well. And we will be hosting, their final evening is November 26th, and we'll be hosting dinner for the students and the host families. It'll be at Westmont High School at 5 o'clock. And so again, if any board members would like to attend that event, if you could let me know, and you're more than welcome to. Gary, do you have a family? I thought so. I thought Gary has.
And Rick.
And Rick has a student. And then in turn, this will be kind of an every other year exchange. And so in the spring of 2019, we'll be able to send over a group of our students to Taiwan to have a similar experience. And then in the fall of 2019, I would anticipate we'll have another group of students from Taiwan. As this program grows, we also, we had a group of our band students go to Germany over the summer, and we anticipate a similar exchange where some of our band students will go over and perform with the Taiwanese high school band, and then in turn, some of their students will come and perform with our band. So we're looking forward to additional opportunities for our students.
I'm told the German band will be here this May.
Oh, that'll be great.
That's great.
Just heard that last night, so.
Before we leave that,
Sure.
This is a pretty exciting thing, and, I thank the host families, again, 2 board members, but I will be hesitant I had shared with some students that I know, that I noticed that the Taiwanese students had uniforms. And so I said, well, maybe we could float that here in our district. And so to the students, I promised that I would bring that up.
Yeah.
No, yeah, not him.
We'll see how much traction they get.
Yeah, right. But no, it seems like it's very exciting. I mean, I've heard these kids, our kids talking about how they're learning so much from these students. So thank you to the village for getting this going. And I know there's a number of parents, I know particularly your wife, Gary, Martha, who's been very instrumental in kind of orchestrating some of these things. Obviously, Kevin in the high school. So thank you for all of that. It's a great.
Probably a special thanks to Pete Landreth, geography teacher of the high school. He's the sponsor of Geography Club, but he's kind of the liaison for the high school, and he's really taken a lot on. And then in turn, he'll be our chaperone going with our students in the spring of 2019.
Yeah, I hear kids are signing up already, by the way.
Yeah.
It's been
For
2
sure.
days.
For sure. And then another upcoming event, the Frosty and Friends Parade, which is part of the kickoff to Holidays, will be on Saturday, November 25th, and we've always had representatives from the school district and the board march in that parade. So if you haven't let Marie know, if you could please let Marie know, we are planning on having a presence in that parade. And again, that's November 25th, and it starts at 5:00 p.m., so about 4:30, Marie?
They said 4:15, but I think if we're there by 4:30, as long as we're going to decorate a car again, as long as we get the car there. So.
Okay. And that the where they kind of set everybody up is at the library, so the Westmont Public Library. So if you're planning on joining us. And then I'm going to skip communications for a second. Just quickly, our joint committee update. Last week, November 7th, we had our committees meet. And again, this is an opportunity for the committees to meet, and more importantly, it's an opportunity for the committees to share information with other committees. We make sure we can support one another's efforts. We don't, we are able to utilize our resources better by not all working on the same thing, but we're actually able to focus on different areas. The Strategic Plan Committee reviewed the plan goals, and they made some adjustments, and they're right now discussing the metrics to measuring the progress. The Climate Committee reviewed their vision and their norms. They reviewed some of the 5 essentials data, and also discussed the Rachel's Challenge presentation that took place. Finance and facilities, not a lot of discussion about facilities. Steve Cashman is currently finishing our 10-year life safety study. We're anticipating that being completed by the end of 2016, and so once we have that report, we'll be able to look at that as a committee. But we did start talking about, in terms of finance, again, the evidence-based funding model, the potential impact it could have for our district. And one of the things that we think will be very important, as we anticipate will be in that Tier 4, is making sure that we're communicating to our community our story. All the things that we're doing as a district that, again, we're not concerned about an adequate education for our students. We want that excellent education, and so we have a dual language program. We have all-day kindergarten. We have nice class sizes for our students. All those things are important to creating that positive learning environment, and so we're starting to brainstorm, okay, how do we articulate our story, and what are some of those things we want to make sure that we're communicating. Our Public Relations Committee reviewed the many ways the district is communicating positive news to the community, and then they also brainstormed some other ways to communicate good news. They kind of hit me with a list of some things that they're looking for feedback on to see if they can go forward with some of those initiatives. And then finally, a new addition was our Bilingual Parent Advisory Committee, BPAC, and they're looking at increased participation among our ELL parents, and then also they are looking at that transition to the junior high as well, because many of those parents are involved in the dual language program. They have a vested interest in that transition, and so they're focusing on that piece as well. And then finally, under communications, tomorrow, November 15th, is Illinois School Board Member Day. So I just want to take a moment to thank our board members for all that you do for our school community. I hope this won't come as a shock to you. These are not paid positions. And so everything that you do is purely voluntary, and many people don't know the amount of time you spend getting ready to make sure that you're informed coming to board meetings. There are committees that you serve on, as well as your evenings that you're here for board meetings. There are different functions that you attend to represent the school district and the school board. And so there are many hours that you contribute, and it's all because you want to provide the best educational system for the students of our district. And so your efforts do not go unnoticed. Thank you for all that you do for the 201 school community.
Thank you. I thought you were going to give us the day off or something tomorrow. Well,
Well, we don't have to come to a school board meeting tomorrow, so.
all right. Thank you. Board reports.
I just have one. I was thrilled. I guess I just want to compliment in particular the 7th grade PLC team. They put a video out via Facebook about exactly what goes on during PLC days, how it helps the students. It was a wonderful, informative piece. They actually had the students narrate it while the still photos were of the teachers in the meetings, and I just thought it was a wonderful example of what we're trying to show our community about what PLC days are all about, okay? It was very nice to see, and really congratulations to them. I hope to see more of it, different levels. Not everybody has to do a video, but I mean, that came across very well received in the community, and that was a wonderful piece, so congratulations to them.
Yeah, that was very well done. Very well done. Nice. I just want to bring up that, we talk about PLCs and continuing education and, the board members. And this weekend, our board members are having the opportunity to go downtown for our tri-conference. And I am extremely proud to serve on a board that every year we go down for this conference. And there's a wealth of information there. Sometimes could be maybe overwhelmed, but it's a great opportunity for us as board members to continue. It's part of our continuing education. And so I wanted to remind everybody that as we go through all the classes, that we will have an opportunity maybe at the December meeting, maybe January, to share with each other and the community some of the things that we learned, because there's so much information there. So again, I feel very proud to be with a board and the superintendent and business manager who go as well to this tri-conference. So looking forward to that this weekend. It's just stunning that we're even talking about that we're already here in November. That seemed to go very quickly this year. But so anyway, anything else? Are there any other public comments? All right, future meetings and events. Miller Elementary School Barnes & Noble Family Reading Night is November 16th at 6 o'clock at the Barnes & Noble in Oak Brook. Again, the Thanksgiving holiday is November 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. There will be no school on those days. The Westmont High School Band Craft Show will be December 2nd at from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. at Westmont High School. And I will give a plug. There's a lot of good things going on there. So, high school winter concert and student art exhibit, December 6th at 7 o'clock, Westmont High School. Westmont Junior High Band Concert, December 7th at 7 o'clock. Is this right, at the Westmont High School?
Yes.
Okay, it is, okay. Manning and Miller Choral Concert and 5th grade band concert, December 11th at 7 o'clock at the Westmont High School Auditorium. And then the next school board meeting, December 12th, 7 p.m., Westmont Village Hall. Okay. Are we going to have, we have we're voting on something after.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so before we go into close, I just would like to say happy Thanksgiving to everyone, to all of us here, and students and staff and everybody here. All right, the chair will entertain a motion to enter closed session for the purpose of discussing personnel issues, student discipline, security issues, probable litigation, and the superintendent's evaluation instrument.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. You got something there. Roll call, please.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes. And then, so again, there will be a vote after closed. Entertain a motion to approve the memo of under, oh, wait a minute. Do I have to do this?
I think you're okay. You're up on the screen.
The chair will entertain a motion to approve the memo of understanding as presented.
So moved.
Second?
And roll call, please.
Mr. Armstrong,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Ms. Wilson,
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton.
Yes. The chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.